$1 trillion net worth. If you're watching this video, that means the SpaceX IPO is live and we finally have a trillionaire. Now, the question that I will be answering in this video is, what did it take to become a trillionaire? And unfortunately, before we get into the answers to that question, there is a filtering question for you, the viewer. See, I do not want everyone to watch this video, only a specific type of audience. Now, the question that I want you to answer is the following. How did Elon acquire this trillionaire net worth status? Is it answer A? He became a professional at hoarding tons of money. He is an expert at corporate greed. That's why he has $1 trillion in his bank account. Or is it answer B? Elon has a big stake in his companies SpaceX and Tesla. People, like retail investors, invest in these companies. Because tons of people invest in these companies, this also increases the worth of his stake in these companies. Now, if you answer A, unfortunately, this video is not for you. I do not wish to waste your time, and I do not mind you clicking off at this very moment. But if you answered B, I think you will want to watch this video because we will learn a ton of Elon's life, since I read the book, which covers about 500 pages on the life of Elon up until 2023. And what happened in this book is the cause, whereas this net worth is the effect. Speaking of his net worth, I think that is the highest highs of his career. However, this highest high of becoming a trillionaire would not have happened without the lowest of lows. Which brings me to the first answer to the question. The first thing you need to understand about what it took to become first trillionaire is this concept. A normal life looks like this. We graduate, we lose someone breaks up with us, we find a new job, we get fired from a job. Tons of highs and lows, but nothing too crazy. We lose a bit, we win a bit, but we stay within normal means of what is essentially a normal life. Now, this is what Elon's life looks like. What does this represent? Essentially a roller coaster. See, the point I'm trying to make is that you would not have these high highs of becoming a billionaire, a trillionaire, building Tesla, building SpaceX, selling millions of cars, sending a rocket to space, without the lowest of lows. Losing his first child, a divorce, nearly going bankrupt multiple times, his rockets blowing up before having one successful launch, and that also nearly bankrupting him. See, the point I'm trying to make is his life is simply lived in the extremes. You would not have the billionaire, the trillionaire, his successful companies without the lowest of lows. Him not being able to sleep because he's still trying to solve problems in his mind. Him not being able to find love because he's so focused on his work. These massive downs also lead to massive ups. Where this concept really clicked for me is in this spiritual book, The Kabbalion. This book really helped me understand this concept of the highs and lows. And basically the book states that the swing up will be equal to the swing down. If you pay attention to this pattern, you will see this in multiple successful people. Best example is Steve Jobs. His lowest of lows was him losing Apple, his baby. When you read his biography, you truly get a sense of how much care he put in the company. And the next thing that happened is that he got kicked out. He built Next. Next was essentially years of learning and failure and burning through money. Then he ended up at Pixar, which is one of his highs. Eventually, he ended up back at Apple, the highest of highs, which led him to eventually build the device that we all use today, the iPhone. Now, how do we internalize this concept? For those who are in the lowest of lows, just like I am at the moment, understand that it is part of achieving the highest of highs. There would be no high highs without these low lows. We need to face these low lows as well, and we have to simply accept that these low lows will happen and are part of life. Just as seasons happen, these low lows will happen as well. Stop right there. Before we move on, I want to explain one thing about this law of rhythm more clearly. And I think the most important concept that you have to understand is that this law is not actually like seasons. See, this law of rhythm is not bound by a time frame. The best thing and the worst thing that have ever happened to you can happen on the very same day. Take again Elon, for example. He launched SpaceX and he lost his firstborn child in the very same month. Now, of course, losing your first child is of course way worse than building a company, but in the grand scheme of things, it is him launching that company that what eventually made him a trillionaire today. So I want you to understand that this is very different from seasons. The best thing that has ever happened to you can essentially last days, weeks, but so can the worst thing. The key takeaway here is to rise above it and to understand that the key takeaway here is actually to rise above the swings and to understand that the swing is temporary and does not last forever. Sorry my camera died, but that's the point. Life as a game. I have this feeling, Zilis once told Musk, that as a kid you were playing one of these strategy games and your mom unplugged it and you just didn't notice. And you kept playing life as if it were that game. Now, my question to you is, how would you treat life if it was a video game? Like for example, would you still care as much about losing if life was an actual video game? Because Elon still cares about winning and losing, but he's completely detached from the outcome. He allows losing to happen. Actually, he realizes that losing is part of the game. Those were two of the Polytopia life lessons, which essentially is this one game that Elon got really addicted to, and he turned his gameplay into actual life lessons. I don't think we need to cover all 8, so I will just run through the most important ones, the ones I think that will benefit you the most. But I think the most important one is the concept of losing, playing as if you were willing to lose and understand that it's part of the process. The next one is maybe even more important. Not sure if you can read this, but it states be proactive. And I think the way to best explain this is with this beautiful gaming controller. When you play a game, there is a very simple cause and effect. You press a button, the character jumps. You press this button, the character moves. Any button you press is the cause, and the character doing something is the effect. Real life actually is much like this controller. However, the controller happens to be in your mind. The weird thing about real life is that sometimes it feels like this controller is off and we make decisions on autopilot. Think of when you really try to eat healthy, yet you keep taking the less healthy snacks out of the fridge. And after eating this snack, you realize, why did I do that? It's actually the unhealthy decision. This is a state of being reactive instead of proactive. And the solution is to essentially raise your conscious awareness. Now, the main question that I want to answer with this section is, how do we raise our conscious awareness in such a way that we take full control over our decision making? And I'm not gonna lie, I do not have the answer. I would actually recommend to read Reality Transurfing, which is a thick ass book of like 600, 750 pages. And it essentially gives you a bunch of methods to take control of this decision making and to see your brain as if it were this controller. Now the next one is very short and sweet. For my guys playing Modern Warfare 2 or Black Ops or any other Call of Duty, do you feel any empathy when you gun down those zombies or when you kill someone in search and destroy and have someone else on the other side of the screen wait the whole round to get respawned? No, business and real life should be very much the same. Elon says that empathy is not an asset. If you want to make progress, you cannot have empathy, meaning you should not consider the feelings of others too much. which essentially means prioritize your own feelings, your goals, your mission above the feelings of others. Because again, this also boils down to decision making. Empathy will directly impact your decision making. People with lots of empathy will have their decision making be impacted on the most simplest things. Think on a simple social media post and then the thought that comes after, what if my mom sees this? What if my dad sees this? They don't want this feeling of shame, which all comes down to empathy. By the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be shame, it could be any other feeling. To conclude, empathy, very simple. Do not consider the feelings of others too much in life and business, especially if it impacts your direct decision making. Even more important if it's these very big decisions like moving to another city, getting another job. This is especially when you should not let empathy impact your decision making, because it's actually you caring about the feelings of others that will keep you in your comfort zone. So yeah, no empathy if you want to become a trillionaire like Elon. Now the fourth one that I want to cover from all 8 lessons of Polytopia is to optimize. And what does this mean? This means to optimize every single turn. Simply said, let's say that a video game, for example Polytopia, gives you 30 turns in one game. How would you optimize those 30 turns? You would really consider the second, third, fourth and fifth order consequences of every turn, right? Such as life and business. If you optimize every decision for what happens after you make the decision, this positively impacts your decision making. Whereas if you do not consider the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh order consequences, this also directly impacts your decision making. Do you see where I'm going? If you optimize your decision making for what happens after you've made the decision, you will simply make better decisions. And Elon understands that this is not just a video game. This is also in real life. Some decisions in which we do not look after what happens after we've made the decision turn out to be horrible decisions. But let's say we all of a sudden start to play out our decisions. Let's say I want to move abroad. I want to move to the UK. Okay, the first order consequence is that I need to find a home. Okay, that's sorted. What happens after? Now I'm all of a sudden in a city with no friends. I know no one. I don't speak the language. In this case I do, but let's say I do not. What happens after? Third order consequence, I start to feel lonely. Fourth order consequence, I start to get depressed. You see where I'm going? It's these small decisions that end up having this massive butterfly effect, which turn out to be either the most horrible decisions ever or the best decisions we can ever make. And yeah, it's very simple. Optimize your decision making for future consequences. We now have these 4 very important lessons that Elon got from a simple game. And this made me think, how did Elon manage to get such valuable life lessons from a simple game such as Polytopia? And this led me to the next lesson, which is to broaden your inputs. Now let's talk about $1 trillion inputs. Let's imagine for a second that this is your brain. Now my question is, where do you get your inputs from? Likely, like every other person, one of your inputs has been school. A teacher teaches you stuff, obviously. And within this school, this teacher is an authority figure. So you have been taught that essentially this teacher is the only source of truth. Or let's take, for example, books. If I want to learn physics, I read a book by Richard Feynman. Or this very video. Let's say I want to learn how to cook chicken. What do? I simply watch a YouTube video. These 3 inputs of learning are essentially what every single regular person uses to learn. How does a trillionaire do this? What are the inputs of a trillionaire? As we already discussed before, he played a simple iPhone game called Polytopia and essentially created 8 business strategy principles out of him playing this game. This game literally taught him how to think and how to decide in his personal business. I have to add, these were not the only times during which he broadened his input to learn. A very random example. Let's say that this is a Tesla Model S and the year is 2018. Elon, being Elon, he was studying this toy car and he was taking it apart. One thing that he noticed is that the bottom of the car was cast out of one piece of metal. So Elon, being Elon, he started questioning, why do we not do this for our actual cars? Obviously, for a toy, this is simple. It's the most efficient and cheapest solution. But why not for a regular car? Of course, after he asked this question, an engineer immediately pushed back and said, there is no casting machine that is able to do this. And Elon, being Elon, he said, well, let's find one or let's build one. It obviously does not violate the laws of physics. What did this observation lead to? It led to Tesla using world's largest casting machine for the Model S. And all of this started from him observing a small toy as big as this Cybertruck. And that's honestly not even the craziest example. So now we have a toy. Even crazier is... yeah, sorry for the ugly ass handwriting. Science fiction. Imagine a very lonely kid in South Africa reading tons of books on science fiction. One of them being A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This very simple science fiction book literally planted the seed in his mind to start a space company, which eventually led to him building SpaceX, which eventually led to him becoming a trillionaire because of the SpaceX IPO. Sit with that for a second. A literal fiction book, a literal science fiction book, led to him building an actual space company, him succeeding, and him sending rockets to space. All because of a book. Now, the point is not even the toy or the Polytopia game or the science fiction book. The point is that he treats every domain as raw material. Let's take another example. He took a problem in technology. He wanted cars to see and understand the road. And instead of doing what the competitors did, which was to add more sensors, more radars, and add LiDAR to their cars, he took ideas from a different domain. He simply looked at biology and thought, humans are able to drive a car with only visual input, aka our eyes. Therefore, cars should be able to do the same. And he took a polar opposite approach to Waymo and the other competitors and said, no, we can do this with just cameras. And honestly, he is succeeding. Elon could have simply went from his normal inputs and used a technology input to solve a technology problem. But he said, no, humans have eyes, therefore, machines should also be able to do this with just eyes, aka cameras. So he took an idea from biology and he applied it to tech across domains. Now my question is, does this sound familiar? Because I covered an exact same genius earlier on this channel. See, Leonardo da Vinci had a problem. He wanted to paint life-like paintings. So what did he do? He went to the morgue. He wanted to have a deeper understanding of human anatomy. He even dissected corpses to study the muscles under their skin. And what was the effect of all these causes? Lifelike paintings like the Mona Lisa, which are essentially lifelike and have true expression of human emotion. Again, one domain, anatomy, transferred to painting. Now, what is my recommendation to you, the viewer? It's simple. Broaden your inputs. Look at other domains to solve your personal problems. Instead of solving technology problems with just technology, look at a toy, study a toy, read more books. Science fiction instead of just fiction books, instead of self-development. Get more ideas from books that don't actually cover real life. And I think that is actually what true creativity is. The purest form of creativity is being able to pull ideas from anything and everything. And that's also, by the way, what I try to do. Let's take the idea behind this channel. So I really loved reading the book on Elon Musk, on Steve Jobs, their biographies. I also love listening to the Founders podcast. And the last thing I love is to watch longer form YouTube videos of a person, for example, Sam Ovens, Charlie Morgan, Nero Knowledge, them standing in front of a whiteboard and just explaining concepts and having me just understand it, learning something new. And that's what I try to combine. The biographies, not the story itself, but the actionable principles as a lecture in front of a whiteboard. And that is how new ideas are born. Now, after broadening your scope of ideas, it's time to put them into reality. And Elon has his own $1 trillion approach for this. Let's talk about transforming your $1 trillion ideas into reality. And most of the times it goes like this. We have this genius idea, which is still formless. It is still like a cloud. It exists only in our mind. At the start, it feels like the best idea ever. Let's say, for example, this channel. Until I really started making videos, it felt like the most genius channel idea ever. Then emotions come into play. What if I can do it? What if this? What if that? I do not have the time. Oh, that's a very common one. I do not have the time to do this. And what happens? This idea ends up staying an idea. Now, how does Elon do this? We have this cloud, this very same cloud. We have a gap, and then we have this idea that takes shape, it takes form. There is one filter that stops Elon from turning an idea into reality. What do you think it is? It's very obvious. Of course, it is physics. The only thing that stops Elon from putting an idea into reality is physics. There are no emotions involved. If he thinks it can be done and it does not violate the laws of physics, the idea will simply find its way to reality, but not for us non-trillionaires. Our ideas will 9 out of 10 times be stopped by either an emotion or something that causes it to just do not work out. In most of the cases, there is always this underlying emotion. I already mentioned the example of I do not have the time, but the underlying emotion is often I'm scared that this will take more time than I can afford. There's always an underlying emotion to our excuses. Or let's take this example of I just can't do it. And the underlying emotion for it's just not possible is either fear, anxiety, or even laziness. Not Elon though, he is completely detached from this. This simply does not happen. He does not let his emotions get in the way of putting an idea out into reality. And the perfect example of this is once again the toy car, the cost. He saw this toy and realized, dude, we can do this for bigger cars. Even though it does not exist, we can still make it happen. It does not violate the laws of physics. Yes, it will be hard, just like self-driving will be very hard of a problem to solve, but he still makes it happen. Now, I've had a lot of thought about trying to apply this physics principle into my own life. And I realized I'm not building rockets, I'm not building electric cars, so this principle of physics doesn't really apply. And I think this might be the same for you. You've heard this idea of first principles thinking and using physics to see what's possible. And that's just not relevant yet for the stage that we are in. And I think I found something better. Let's talk about that. If there is anything that I want you to take away from this very messy lecture, it's simply this. Create what you would consume. Honestly, it was never about becoming a trillionaire or building a $1 trillion company. It was about Elon creating what he would consume. And that's very apparent when you read the book. He wanted to create things that he would love to see in the world. And same should actually be the case for us. We should not focus on the $1 trillion, the $1 billion net worth, or becoming a millionaire. Of course, these are all nice things, but I think this is even better. Creating what you would consume, and in turn having others consume what you have created, because you created what you would consume. Is there anything better than that? I don't think so. That's all.